Hey everybody, it's Cass and Core TV. It's your girl, Miss Public Info, here with the latest and greatest and sometimes hated updates of the most high-profile cases going on around the country. We're going to do a little bit of a different show today, guys, because this show, I usually don't do reviews. We're not going to do a television review, but what we are going to do is we're going to talk about the Sean Combs, the reckoning of Sean Combs, that is, Netflix docu-series, EP'd by none other than Curtis 50 Cent Jackson, and directed by Alexis Stapleton, featuring some of the most prolific hip hop artists ever, but also some of those folks who were there during the Bad Boy era, also at the beginning of Sean Combs' life and the culmination of events that took place just this past September or October, rather, when he was sentenced to federal prison. Now, the reason we're going to talk about this is because, of course, in the last episode, we talked about the cease and desist letter that Sean Combs' attorney sent to Netflix's Ted Sarandos, the CEO head honcho, to demand that he pull the Reckoning documentary. Of course, as I told you all, this documentary was set to go. He was never going to win that battle, which he did not. It premiered yesterday. It's on now. It's a four-part series. I've watched it probably three or so times because it's a four-part series. You really need to watch it probably at least twice to get all of the information. Each episode is about 45 minutes. Maybe it's a little less, 35 minutes runtime for each episode. So you're talking about a 2.5 hour sort of, four-part series. Hey, it gives surviving R. Kelly vibes for sure. Want to say this at the front, have it in the title, but got to say it myself. This is a spoiler episode for those of you who have not seen this. I'm going to show some photos. I may show a little video. Nothing, the video is already out. So if you see that, that's not a spoiler. But much of what I'm going to talk about in this episode will likely be a spoiler for those of you who haven't seen it. So if you haven't seen it and you don't want to be informed before you get a chance to look at it yourself, feel free to click off and come back to me once you've seen it so that you've seen it for yourself, and then you can come back. But this episode, it will be a spoiler for you if you have not seen it. That said, we're going to move along. So this particular episode, I mean, this particular show, obviously, came with a lot of controversy, as I talked about in the last episode, because, of course, 50 Cent is at the forefront of this, and he is a longtime nemesis of Sean Combs. Sean Combs has a lot of nemesis, of course, because of who he is. But 50 Cent is one of those. I mentioned in the last episode that Daphne Joy, who was also Jane Doe, too, I believe. She is the mother of one of 50 Cent's sons. So, this has all the earmarkings of a drama, but 50 Cent contends that this has nothing to do with retaliation. This has nothing to do with, any sort of, bad feelings or whatnot. But he felt that it was his responsibility to sort of speak on behalf of hip hop as it relates to the fact that no one has said anything in an official capacity from hip hop. And so, he did not want this sort of time and space, this case to go by in history without having had an answer to it. The episode, the show, the series itself is more than just about the events that, took place with this federal indictment, but rather it is a lead up to the culmination, which is the federal indictment, right? In episode one, we talk about Sean Combs and his time growing up in Mount Vernon with his I'm going to share some photos here, so bear with me, but with his friend Tim Patterson. Now this is Tim Patterson. Tim Patterson is his childhood friend. Tim Dog Patterson is his childhood friend. He's featured throughout from episode 1 through 4. He is featured in this show. And he sort of describes, Sean Combs growing up. He describes Janice Combs, the upbringing, how, Janice Combs, excuse me, guys, brought P. Diddy up. excuse me, brought him up and sort of brought him up in a tough environment. And so he sort of gives the rundown, the real deal of Sean P. Diddy Combs and how he's brought up. That said, Tim sort of gives this outlook on the fact that, Sean Combs was brought up in a very interesting situation, that his father was a gangster who was unalived in Central Park. Sean Combs doesn't find out, how he actually dies until he's much older and reads a newspaper clipping for himself. But that, according to Tim, he's been trying to prove that he is this guy all along, that, Sean Combs was someone who couldn't fight growing up, but he was trying to prove that he was this guy. So the first episode really sort of chronicles his childhood. It chronicles how he grows up, how he comes to be. You go through sort of the era of him being at Howard University. You go through, him sort of up and coming at Uptown Records, him being the protege of Andre Harrell. They talk about, some of the folks that he runs into during that time. I'll Be Sure is in this particular episode. I'll Be Sure sort of sprinkle here and there throughout. I think he's in episode 1 and 3 specifically, but Heavy D is mentioned. And then Kirk Burrows. So Kirk Burrows, of course, is the guy that Sean Combs sort of builds Bad Boy Entertainment with. Kirk Burrows, he essentially builds a brand with Kirk Burrows. He later on tells Kirk Burrows, hey, you got to give up 25% of this company. And this is part of what I covered. I think I covered this last week or maybe a couple of weeks ago, where I talk about Kirk Burrows saying that, suing Sean Combs and his mother for, this is Kirk Burrows here, suing Sean Combs and his mother for his percentage ownership of the company, saying that he was strong armed out of the company. Well, in this docu-series, Kirk Burrows, featured here, talks about it. He talks about how he's strong armed, talks about how he was basically, heading up the financials of Bad Boy. He owned 25% of it. He came over to Bad Boy from Uptown. Well, he was working with Sean Combs alongside him at Uptown, and that he was there the day that Andre Harrell fired Sean Combs, and that Andre Harrell told Kirk Burrows, I had to fire him. They go through, Kirk Burrows talks specifically about, Sean Combs during these early years of Bad Boy Entertainment, creating Jodeci at Uptown before he goes over to Bad Boy, of course. Creating Jodeci, finding Mary J. Blige, talking about sort of like the marketing genius behind Sean Combs, and then going into sort of what I would call his official villain era, where he, sort of becomes this guy that, is who he is. Let's play the teaser, the official teaser from Netflix of this episode, or of this show rather. Let's play the teaser. Let's get into that, because I think this will give those of you who don't really know what, this is all about, or give you an idea of kind of what the series, how it sort of laid out. So I'm going to play the teaser. I'm going to be quiet here and we're going to go into that. This is about a minute long.
We have to find somebody that'll work with us that has dealt in the dirtiest of dirty business. We're losing. Puffy, Puff Daddy, Diddy, Sean Combs, these reincarnations All those name changes are attached to really bad deeds. Everything in life, you're gonna have people that are bad and people that are good. You have to choose your side.
Okay. So I wanted you to see the teaser and sort of get an idea of what the whole series sort of encompass. Of course, there's a lot more than it showed, but it kind of gives you a like a quick snippet of kind of what they, talk about in the show. In the docu-series. The docu-series goes through the legalities of, the case in terms of you see Sean Combs talking to his attorneys about how they're losing. This is 6 days. They chronicleize the footage that you see of Sean Combs um leading up to the arrest is 6 days before the arrest. So let's talk about the footage and how they obtained it. So in the last episode, I was talking to you about how, they Netflix was sort of told, like, demanded by Sean Combs's team. They sent a demand letter basically demanding that they pull the episode, as I stated. Of course, that didn't happen. But what they were sort of hedging their bets on getting that episode pulled, or getting the docu-series rather pulled, was because of the fact they say that the footage was stolen. But Netflix contends that the footage has not been stolen, that Sean Combs, and this is in the cards in the episode, in the keep saying episode, in the docu-series itself, you'll see it if and when you watch it. It says in the cards that a videographer that Sean Combs hired back in September 24 to follow him around, that he basically, or he or she, they had the footage after Sean Combs had been arrested. So the footage really was in the hands of the videographer that Sean Combs hired. Now, Netflix and Co., which would be Curtis Jackson and Alexis Stapleton as EPs, they worked with the legal teams they were supposed to work with to obtain the rights to the footage. And so some of that footage that you see, or some of what you saw in the teaser, it encompasses that footage of him sort of walking around and all of that. That is from the September 24 footage taken by the videographer. Now, Alexis, in her interview with Robin Roberts in Good Morning America, she said they worked really hard to obtain the footage. She gave a statement also yesterday as a response to the demand letter to pull the docu series. She said that they worked really hard to obtain those rights, and that they got them fair and square. And so they also worked really hard, she said, to protect the identity of the videographer. Obviously, the videographer doesn't want to be outed because it, could affect his livelihood in some kind of way, he or she's livelihood in some kind of way. So therefore, that person is not being ID'd either. So this notion, what Netflix is officially saying in their official capacity, Ted Sarandos, what he's saying essentially is that this notion that the footage is somehow stolen is ridiculous, that it is not stolen, that it was, fair and square, obtained, and that they obtained the rights to it. Now, I have worked with Netflix countless times on countless shows. And I can tell you again, as I did in the episode previous, that they know how to obtain rights to things. They would never risk their multi-million billion-dollar business for the likes of one docu-series to get the rights to it. They have likely obtained it fair and square. Their legal division does not play around with that sort of thing. They don't do it. So I don't see why or where they would do it. Sean Combs' legal team yesterday gave a statement to the press. Deadline did an article on it. They did an article on it, basically stating that, he, uh, Ted Sarandos, which is the CEO of Netflix, basically decided to do this hit piece because in 2023, he and Sean Combs couldn't come to a meeting of the minds of a docu-series, and that Ted Sarandos did not want Sean Combs to have creative control. And so when Sean Combs said no, he wouldn't do it and he would not give up creative control, they are suggesting that Sean Combs, I'm sorry, that Ted Sarandos and Netflix then went over to Curtis Jackson, 50 Cent, and decided to do this as a retaliation hit piece. Now, I call foul on that because in 2023, there's no way in the world Ted Sarandos could have foreshadowed or known that Sean Combs was going to be in this kind of legal trouble. No one knew at that time that he was going to be raided by the feds. No one knew that there was going to be a federal indictment or anything like that. That was all actually happening at the time that the uh, this documentary was being created, right? So there's no way to say that Ted Sarandos did this hit piece for in retaliation is a little bit of a reach. Now, the 50 Cent of it all is a little bit different because 50 Cent, quite frankly, is an arch nemesis of Sean Combs. Everyone knows that. And so Sean 50 Cent did an interview with the Good Morning America and said this has nothing to do with, retaliation or his, rival with Sean Combs, but who knows. However, regardless of what the intentionality was, the receipts were brought as it relates to this documentary. This four-part documentary is essentially, in my opinion, a confirmation of uh all of the accusations, if you will, or all of the alleged, stories that we've heard over the years. Now we're hearing it from the people it actually involved. We hear from Keefe D, who is now on the hook for Tupac Shakur's murder. We hear the tapes of Keefe D talking to the LAPD in a proffer interview, and a proffer interview is essentially an interview where a defendant can speak to law enforcement without incriminating themselves. So Keefe D, we hear the tapes of Keefe D speaking to the LAPD about the assassination of Tupac Shakur, or I'm sorry, not the LAPD, excuse me, the Las Vegas PD, about the assassination of Tupac Shakur. We also hear Keefe D talk about the hit that Sean Combs put on Tupac. We hear that. We hear from the one of the other leaders from the Mansfield Crips in the know of all of this, that talk about the fact that there was money offered for Tupac and Suge Knight's murder. We hear from people who were around at that time who would know. Okay, like this documentary is really something. It talks about a lot of different things. They talk about Kim, they talk about Cassie, they talk about Misa Hilton, they talk about his beginnings of Bad Boy Entertainment, Andre Harrell, all of that. They talk about all of that stuff. But the reason why I'm pointing out the Tupac and of it, and I'm gonna get into the Biggie of it all too, because they also talk to um the investigator that who was from the LAPD that basically wanted to know about the murder of Notorious B.I.G. They talked to him, and he also, interviewed Keefe D in the proper interview, and it's all webbed together. And one of the things he said was that Sean Combs was stonewalling and trying to get people not to talk as it related to uh the Notorious B.I.G. murder, which happened 6 months after the Tupac murder, because it would implicate him in the Tupac murder. And so he says that this retired LAPD detective, now those of you who have been on YouTube and all of these places, you've seen him before because he's done his rounds. And he essentially says that, excuse me, guys, I have a little bit of a tickle, maybe coming down with a little bit of something, hope not. But He essentially says that he, orchestrated this. Kirk Burrows, who is a founding, you know, executive of Bad Boy Entertainment, confirms that he believes that Sean Combs had something to do with Tupac Shakur's murder. So this four-part series doesn't necessarily tell us anything new, but what it does do, it confirms the things that we've been talking about, the things that we've been hearing, the things that we've seen. It confirms all of that. The clip where, Sean Combs is like, oh, I need to take a bath and all of that. Now, in the last episode, I said, well, I could see where he, would need hand sanitizer after shaking so many hands there in Harlem and everything. And he's around all these different people. But when you see the episode, it puts everything in context. It really wraps everything up in context. He does come across as, now this is not really editing. This is mostly how they story tell the entire series, because this part where he's, going through Harlem and there's all these people around and he gets in the car and he's like, I got to take a bath now and all of that. This is towards the end of the docu-series. So you've already been with him throughout all of this, and now you're towards the end and you're seeing more of sort of like his, facade. And that's essentially what they sort of give us. They story tell the fact that this is a story of a guy who has had various facades over the years in order to maintain a mask to amass his wealth. And one of the people that is in this episode, who had me in stitches for a lot of it, but also knowing the history of, him and Sean Combs, it also, gave a different take on this as well. Was Mark Curry. Mark Curry, of course, those of you who were fans, are fans of the Bad Boy, the height of the Bad Boy era, will remember Mark Curry. And Mark Curry, of course, has been on various, like, I think he's done Vlad, I think he's done Capone News and a couple of other shows where and he was in the HBO series as well. The Diddy, whatever it's called, Finding Diddy or whatever it is, something like that. But anyway, the downfall of Diddy, I think that's what it's called, the HBO version docu-series that they did. And Mark Curry is really you know, he was one of the originals at the height of Bad Boy. He did the tours. He, We Ain't Going Nowhere. He's in that, very famous music video that came out probably around 2002, 3, somewhere in there. So, you're talking about a guy that wrote, for uh Diddy, who, sold records for him long before the band and Day 26 and all of these people. And had unfortunately found out the sleuthiness of Sean Combs, prior to all these people as well. Mark Curry spent a great deal of time, struggling. There's a stories about him having to, sell backstage passes, having to sell cannabis, losing his house, because he was so broke during the Bad Boy years. And a lot of that comes from the fact, and Kirk Burrows talks about this and other people too, in the docu-series, that Sean Combs amassed his early wealth because he wasn't paying his artists. Kirk Burrows says in the episode how one thing that he would realize is that when he would look at Death Row and he would um look at Bad Boy, and of course Death Row was around before that Bad Boy, was that Death Row was taking care of its artists and Bad Boy was not. And Mark Curry is an example of that. Now, Mark Curry had me in stitches the entire time because of the way he speaks. He's very matter of fact, and he doesn't change for this docu-series at all. But he is very clear on how he saw the web of evilness, so to speak, and deceit with Sean Combs during his time. And that, for instance, when Sean Combs was going to go beat up, Steve Stout because of the whole crucifix clip that he sent out, and Sean Combs wanted him to get rid of it, that Mark Curry said, he said that, Sean Combs like, we're gonna go get, Steve Stout, blah blah blah. He said, well, while y'all are doing that, what verse you want me to be working on? Like basically, I had nothing to do with that. I was trying to keep my nose clean. I was just trying to make music and feed my family. So I thought that was interesting. Mark Curry is a funny person, but a very insightful person to have on this show, because he was very clear, and we all know that Mark Curry was there, like, you know what I mean? So it's not like this is somebody that we're like, oh well, he can't be trusted. No, he was there, we know. And there were other people, they had a lot of different people that were there, that were a part of this series, that I thought was interesting, because as Alexis Stapleton said, these weren't all people that hated Sean Combs. Like, of course, his childhood friend didn't hate him. Kirk Burrows, after a certain amount of time, he had problems with him, but he didn't hate him. They talked to people who didn't necessarily like him, didn't necessarily dislike him. That there were people in this docu-series that were not victims of his, but there were also victims of his in the docu-series as well. Capricorn Clark was in the docu-series, so I won't spoil that for you, but she was in it, and I thought it was interesting. The jurors, juror 27 and juror 106, were um in the docu-series, a black woman and an Indian male. Not much sympathy for the victims. Definitely, coming defending why they came up with the verdict that they came up with. So there was one, the Clayton Howard guy, the guy who was one of the sex workers with Diddy and Cassie. He was in it. Uh, so it's very interesting to hear his take. He had an 8-year relationship with these two. So it was very interesting, which is pretty much most of their relationship. I think Cassie and Diddy were together 10 years. So he was there for most of their relationship. He has excellent insight onto how all of this sort of unfolded, and the kinds of things that he saw. Of course, they played the Continental Hotel tape quite a few times. You saw, split splices of it, and then they showed the whole thing. Um, and it was very well put together. It was very well put together. It was accurate as it relates to some of the historical facts, as it relates to like hip hop itself. Though especially for, me, I'm from LA, so I'm a West Coast chick and a West Coast rap fan, and I was alive during the time. I was a teenager during the East Coast West Coast rap wars. Historically, it was factual, spot on factual, as it relates to what was going on and at that time. um some of the things, why some of the things happened the way that they did, and the timeline and the way that they did. So it was very well put together in that regard. Legally, now there's talk about, a fifth episode, because of course this series stops with the acquittal of the more serious charges and the conviction of the Mann Act. So there's talk of a fifth episode. So I don't know how true that is, but legally, Sean Combs's folks have no standing. Like they don't have any grounds as to be like, oh, you guys got to can this or whatever. It'll be interesting to see later if anything, comes of it, as it relates to the fact that, he's, looking to get some sort of I don't know, civil suit, involved because he feels like he was misrepresented in some kind of way. I don't know if that happens. I don't think there's any legal standing for that. This docu-series is no different than any of the other docu-series that we've seen from Hulu, from uh, HBO, and the countless ones from TNZ. So he didn't come after any of those people. I think this is really a craw for Sean Combs because they have that footage that he paid a videographer to take, and apparently Netflix was able to obtain the rights to it. And of course, Sean Combs feels that it was obtained in the wrong way and that he was misrepresented in it, but essentially what it shows is Sean Combs trying to find a way out of his trouble. And Kirk Burrows says that in the episode that he essentially is trying to find a way out, essentially a way out of trouble, not learning or not necessarily trying to figure out where he went wrong, but essentially just trying to get his way out of trouble, essentially. So I think that's very interesting. We're going to stay on top of this. Definitely going to be on top of the Keefe D trial that is set to take place in Las Vegas um, in early 2026. So we're going to be on top of that as well. Of course, Keefe D is the last man standing in the Tupac murder. So we're going to be on top of that. I am going to be definitely staying very close to that. And so we'll be able to tell you all the updates there. Now, as it relates to, I want to bring this up because this is, I'm sorry, guys. This is very interesting to note. Jada Pinkett Smith. Now, Jada Pinkett, we haven't heard that name in a while, since the whole who is it? Chris Rock debacle. Um, as it relates to, the slap heard around the world with he and Will Smith at the Oscars some time ago. But Jada Pinkett is in the hot seat. Now, you guys might remember a few years ago where Jada Pinkett was basically accusing one of Will Smith's, I'm sorry, I'm sorry, it wasn't that she was accusing it. One of Will Smith's former friends was upset that he did not get credit for a book that he helped put together of Will Smith. And because he could not uh this is Brother Balal Salam is who I'm talking about. Some of you might remember it. But because he did not was not included in that book, he did an interview with Tasha K, which you can find someplace. You can find it on her website, but he did an interview with Tasha K where he alleges that he caught Will Smith having intercourse with Dwayne Martin on a set on in a trailer on the set of some, I think it was some show or movie or something. I don't know. Anyway, and so he says that I think that the problem was that he was not paid for his input of Will's memoir, which was called Will. Okay. And that, and also he was included in some photos in Will Smith's memoir as well. So, this is a guy that's been friends with Will Smith and the family for nearly 40 years. His name is Bilal Salam, aka Brother Bilal. Um, Now he has sued Jada Pinkett Smith. We've obtained the complaint. It was filed on December 1st, and it alleges that Jada Pinkett confronted him in the lobby of the Regency Calabasas Commons on September 25th, 2021, while he was attending a private birthday celebration for Will. The suit alleges that Jada was accompanied by approximately 7 members of her entourage during the confrontation. Now, you guys may remember that when this accusation came out, meaning Brother Balal's accusation that he caught Will Smith and Dwayne Martin who's an actor and a friend of Will Smith in a compromising position, that Jada Pinkett was heard or stopped by TMZ and asked for a reaction, and her reaction said, "We suing." That was her reaction. End quote. We're suing. Well, it's funny that now the next suit that we're hearing is from Brother Balal, because what he says is that when she confronted him with several people of her entourage in this lobby of this hotel, that she became verbally aggressive and threatened him by stating that if he continued to tell her personal business, that he would end up missing or catching a bullet. He also stated that Jada Pinkett demanded that he sign a non-disclosure agreement, so an NDA, or else, I guess, that he would end up missing or catching a bullet if he didn't. And after the alleged incident, Jada Pinkett's team allegedly followed Salam to his car while continuing to issue verbal threats. Then, 6 months later, in March of 2022, Brother Balak claims he refused a request from a mutual friend to assist with, in quote, crisis management following the Academy Awards. This is the whole thing where, the slap heard around the world, where Will Smith, famously slapped Chris Rock for the joke about Jada Pinkett being G.I. Jane and all of that with the alopecia thing. End quote. It says from the filing, the plaintiff refused to perform tasks he believed were illegal, unethical, or morally compromising, stating his conscience would not allow him to be involved in any cover-up or deceptive PR campaign. This is what the filing alleges. So what this is indicating is that after the whole thing with Chris Rock, he was approached by Jada's team or someone. It doesn't say it's Will's team. It says that he was approached by Jada's team to well, actually, it says that he was approached by a mutual friend, I guess, of the family and him, to do something what he is calling unethical and illegal, and that he would not have a part in it. So he is claiming that Jada Pinkett tried to get him involved in something illegal. He also claims that after he refused, he soon began getting threats from Will Smith and Jada Pinkett Circle, and was the target of a retaliatory campaign that was launched against him. He further alleges that he faced further threats after it was discovered that he was writing a whistleblower memoir about his time with the Smiths. The smear campaign heightened after Bilal did the interview, and I'm assuming they're talking about the interview with Tasha K that went viral. And then, of course, the alleged, allegation about Dwayne Martin. So it seems like all of this is stemming from years long issues that Jada Pinkett had with Brother Bilal, and that it all came to a head with the after the viral moment that happened back in 2023, with Dwayne Martin. And it sounds like back in 2021, she was, before he even talked about Dwayne Martin, that there were some already issues going on there. And this is basically because of the Will Smith memoir, where Brother Barlow feels like he wasn't appropriately compensated for his contributions to it. So then, of course, you know, Jada Pinkett, and I'm sorry, I said TMZ incorrectly earlier, was the Breakfast Club. Jada Pinkett went on the Breakfast Club and laughed off the claim. And then she said it was ridiculous and that it was nonsense. And, she made the, accusation that, that he was trying to shake her down trying to shake uh her and Will Smith down. And then of course she came with the "we suing," and that was TMZ. I was right about that because TMZ followed her out to her car, and I remember them asking her, one of their little interviewers asking her, and she was like, "We suing," and then of course, she never filed a lawsuit against him. And so he also talks about that in his complaint and says that the statement was false, reckless, and made with malicious intent to manipulate public opinion and damage his character, is what he's stating. He claims that due to Jada Pinkett's alleged actions, including alleged attempts by uh, her and her admissions to bribe and intimidate and suppress him, that he has suffered damages like financial loss, reputational harm, emotional drama, physical health issues, and the complete derailment of his personal life and his career. He said he's now seeking $3 million in financial damages. And of course, Jada Pinkett, Will Smith, or Dwayne Martin were reached out for comment, but have not, as of yet, made comment on any of this. Of course, this is all very interesting because of the Smiths, who admitted themselves have been separated since 2016. And then there was talk from Tasha K and other outlets who said that, but I remember Tasha K talking about it specifically, who said that the Smiths were headed for Splitsville, meaning they were headed for divorce. But then in September, this past September, we saw them together in this photo, and we hadn't seen them together for years, actually. We saw them together in this photo, September 8th, I believe, here in LA, and they seemed to be very much together. They had decided that they were not going to be separated, and that they weren't going to get a divorce. As a matter of fact, at the time of this photo that you're seeing here, there was an actual article that came up by Entertainment, that basically said that, they were not going to be, they had decided not to file to end their marriage, even though they had been separated since 2016. That they ultimately decided not to end their marriage. And quote, Jada Pinkett said, "I made a promise that there will never be a reason for us to get a divorce," she said. In an NBC News special. She said, "We will work through whatever." And I just haven't been able to break that promise. So the Smiths don't look to be, getting a divorce or anything like that. So that won't be happening. And then back in 2023, she told people, "We've been doing some really heavy duty work together. We just got deep love for each other, and we are going to figure out what that looks like for us." So, and we've all heard Will Smith say that they're not, ever breaking up or anything like that, that it almost happened once, but it's not happening. So I'm just sort of bringing that up as to bring up the backstory of the Smiths and sort of how they, got into this predicament with Brother Bilal to, now face this $3 million lawsuit. It's so wild to me that this is happening. But anyway, this is kind of related to the Diddy story only because of Tupac, right? And Jada Pinkett and Tupac, and they had their moment in time and all of that. Ooh, it's a lot going on. Okay, guys, that's going to be it for Castle Court TV for today. Thanks so much for joining me. I appreciate you guys. We will be back soon with other cases of note, other happenings in the legal world. Until then, guys, stay out of trouble, stay warm. It's very cold out there, and try not to get any sniffles. I got something going on, guys. I'm gonna knock this out real quick with some tea and some honey and get that going. But thanks, guys. We appreciate you. Remember just to not remember not to forget. Remember to rather to like and subscribe. Thanks so much for joining, and we'll see you later, guys. Peace.